Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me again. We're going to talk today about Sedna. I want to do kind of a psychological reading of this myth and show how it relates to the human psychology from the inside out. And I think that when I can go through some of these processes, it's going to help people understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about when I talk about the inner psychological reading of astrology and the way that I tend to look at it. And so with the myth of Sedna, she starts out, this is an Inuit village. It's a very old mythology that comes from the indigenous people of the Inuit. She is part of a village and she is trying to find a mate. And she goes through many suitors and is not really, accepting of what the norm is. And I feel like that is kind of talking about how the psyche gets when it is reaching a point of like the birth of the recognition of its inner psychology, the inner family system. And so she rejects most of these people and eventually finds one that she finds acceptable, that she's attracted to. And I think that what that represents is she has unmet parts of herself on the inside. And remember, in some of our other videos, we've talked about this. Whatever we don't meet within ourselves, we project out onto other people so that we can have it mirrored back to us and try to meet it that way. It's kind of like the green eggs and ham approach of, would you like to eat it over here? Would you like to eat it over there? That's a totally different video. But she eventually finds somebody that she's attracted to and agrees to marry him. And they move to an island that is remote. And uh, he transforms and changes into this not what she thought he was. It turns out that he's a bird, and I think that that has psychological meaning. If you think about a bird stays on the surface, it flies in the air. It can sit on the ground, it can be on the ground, it can fish in the water, but it's not getting into the depths of the psyche. And so when you're doing a psychological reading, that's important because the bird is a part that is uh, disassociating or escaping reality in a way that makes it so we're not really engaging in a meaningful way. And so when the bird reveals himself, he feeds her only raw fish, and she's very unhappy and miserable in this life. And I think that the raw fish is symbolic. And when you think about what we eat as nourishment, when we're talking about a psychological reading, that represents what we're taking in mentally, what we're understanding psychologically. And so if we're not cooking our food or haven't taken the time, like this shows up in many other myths too. If you look at the Gnostics, they talk about bread, bread takes flour and all this, and but we have to cook it, we have to apply heat to it in a controlled way to be able to metabolize it, but it's a nourishment that comes from something that is changed psychologically. And so when we're eating raw food, we're kind of staying on the surface. We're not, it's just a logical translation. We're not getting into the deeper meanings of things and able to see the deeper meanings of life. And so it becomes totally unsatisfactory. She becomes uh, disengaged. And her father comes on a canoe across the ocean to try and rescue her. But as they're escaping, the bird finds out and comes and flaps his wings and causes a big storm and big waves in the ocean. And the father panics. And I think that the father here is representative of a survival based strategy of the psyche. Like humans have this innate survival, like we're pre-wired through millions of or thousands of years of evolution to survive. And so the instinct, the instinctual survival mechanism is to preserve life at all costs. And so when the storm gets really rough, the father, the masculine side of the psyche, decides I'm going to prioritize survival over this crisis that's happening, because oftentimes we will create a crisis for uh, so that we can get out of something that is not working anymore. It's not getting us what we want anymore. So the parts of ourselves have been engaging in a survival based strategy, and eventually it gets to where we aren't getting what we need anymore. And so the masculine part of our psyche is turning its back on these parts and not meeting them, neglecting them, not understanding what they need. And so uh, they do what any good child would do, which is being ignored. They rebel to get attention because negative attention is better than no attention, right? And so it's like a natural progression of the way relationships develop, right? If we don't engage and meet, then the parts rebel, and 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 so we're forced to engage through crisis. So back to the story, the father kicks her over the side of the boat and tries to save himself. And I think that's representative of this survival, this instinctual survival strategy. And she's hanging on to the edge of the boat. And so he pulls out his fishing knife and he cuts all of her fingers off so she can't hold on anymore. And I think that is representative of her trying to hold on to the strategies that have developed, is which were an intelligent way to survive through a traumatic event. Oftentimes our psyche will do that, create these parts of ourselves will take on these roles because they're afraid of something else happening, and do these jobs which they believe they need to do out of fear. And so uh, eventually she can't hold on and she gets swallowed up into the ocean and goes down, and the fingers end up becoming the whales and the walruses and the fish, and these sea creatures. And I think that what's happening here on the psychological level is we have the strategies have fallen apart. They uh, we take the consciousness. Sedna falls into the ocean and gets swallowed up by the ocean, and the consciousness engages and starts to witness the parts, which is an unburdening process. And so as that happens, they become they're allowed to do what they do naturally, which is a whale or a walrus. These different parts of ourselves start to disengage from the jobs that they felt forced into to do, and now they can do what they were instinctually designed to do. And at first, she has no control over it. And in the myth, her she because she has no fingers, she's unable to care for her hair, and she can't comb her hair. And so it gets tangled and wild. And I think that this is symbolic of uh, how through traumatic events, the different parts of us can get entangled in ways that are so hard to make sense of and untangle. The parts work in tandem with each other, and we can't we can't get control or understand or meet them because they're playing against each other. One part wants to do this, the other part wants to do that. That's polarization. And there's oftentimes a third part that they're trying to protect, which is a traumatized or exiled part of ourselves that we're, is something to be freed, and through these processes, the in the story, the shamans go down because ultimately she withholds the fish, and the fishermen can't catch fish anymore. So they send the shamans down to help her comb her hair and untangle these stories so that she can make sense of them, and it calms her down and sends. And then the fish are able to, be they can harvest fish from the sea again. And and I believe that, through this ongoing process, it's a back and forth where there's an abundance of fish, and then all of a sudden it dries up, and so they send the shamans down, untangle the hair, and then the abundance comes back. And I think that's representative of the spiral of the cycles of life. And this is a process that we're going to be engaged in through the rest of, our lives, and I believe in past lives and future lives as well. So uh, when we consciously engage, sometimes things happen that the psyche can't process, so it buries it, and it becomes tangled up. And we we end up learning uh, how to engage it consciously. And so I think that the the storyline culminates when we are able to take the a divine masculine way of engaging and marry that with the divine feminine way of engaging, the curiosity, the openness, the ability to metabolize what we are taking in, which is a way of symbolically seeing things, a way of understanding the needs of the parts of ourselves, and being able to just meet them, witness them, be with them in a relational way. And that requires the divine masculine, which is to give love to ourselves and engage in a way uh, that is embracing and accepting of these parts of ourselves, rather than trying to survive and turning our backs on and moving through life without that openness and curiosity. So it takes both sides of our psyche to engage life in a way that that the Gnostics call it, the wedding chamber of our mind. And if we can marry the masculine and the feminine sides, then that's a conscious way of engagement in life. And on this channel, we're going to bring in all kinds of different ways of seeing things in a psychological reading of it, because I think that's where things get super profound and it can move the needle. And so if we if we try to engage our lives consciously on the deeper level, in the depths of our soul, then we can really start to meet life without projecting these things on the outside for us to need to engage back and have mirrored back to us. And so, anyway, that's a little bit of the psychological reading of the mythology of Sedna. I hope you guys enjoyed that. There's probably more to unpack in the myth. If we were to go into the deeper details of it, we could peel that apart. But I felt that this was an important one, and it's a prevalent part of the astrology, and I think that we should look at it. In the physical reality, Sedna, the asteroid Sedna, is about half the size of Pluto. And so it's a pretty significant piece of our psyche, and it's deeper than Pluto. Sedna is on about a 10,500 year orbit around Earth. And so, because it's so slow, we wait until it's within 1 degree of things to determine, how it's going to affect and how the cycles work. But also because of that, it is in there. Pretty much everything that we follow is going to be in a relationship to said. And so I think the story is super important, and we'll probably refer to it often. And I hope that helps to understand a little bit more about the psychological reading and how it interacts with our inner psychology. The human psyche is an amazing and beautiful thing, and if engaged consciously, the relationship can blossom into quite profound things. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Do all of the things, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we can talk about other mythologies, other psychological readings of things, and just the general astrology, that the astrological weather as we come through. So I hope you all have a good day, and we'll see you later. Till next time.